In the heart of Paris, within the Grand Louvre Museum, one painting reigned supreme, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, by the early 20th century. She was already the world's most celebrated work of art. Her enigmatic smile had captured poets, philosophers, and even emperors for centuries. But in those days, unlike now, she did not rest behind bulletproof glass. Instead, she hung quietly in the salon, framed modestly, admired by those who happened to pass through. Leonardo da Vinci, the Renaissance genius, had painted her in Florence around 1503. His mastery of sfumato, blending light and shadow, made the portrait breathe with life. Many believed the painting contained secrets of the human soul, secrets that would forever elude explanation. And yet, in 1911, while Parisians bustled outside with modern inventions, telephones, automobiles, electric lights, the most valuable painting in history waited in silence, vulnerable. Few could imagine that soon an audacious theft would shake the world. By 1910, the Louvre was already the crown jewel of Paris, drawing visitors from all over the world. Yet, inside its sprawling galleries, the Mona Lisa was not treated with the reverence she receives today. She hung modestly on an ordinary wall of the salon, alongside other Renaissance works. Some visitors would pause, study her face, and move on. Others barely noticed her at all. The museum's security was shockingly casual. Guards strolled lazily through the halls, and there were no cameras, alarms, or protective glass. Visitors could walk right up to the painting, closer than one can ever dream today. Ironically, despite her global fame, the Mona Lisa was often overlooked. In the Parisian imagination, she was celebrated, but not yet iconic. And it was in this atmosphere of neglect that opportunity quietly began to stir, opportunity that would soon be seized with daring precision. Vincenzo Peruggia, a quiet Italian handyman, had worked at the Louvre before. He was familiar with the museum's corridors, the placement of the paintings, and the routines of the guards. To outsiders, he seemed unremarkable, just another worker in a bustling museum. But beneath that ordinary exterior, a daring plan was forming. Peruggia's motive was a mixture of nationalism and ambition. He believed that the Mona Lisa rightfully belonged in Italy, stolen by Napoleon centuries ago, and he dreamed of returning her to her homeland. Yet ambition also whispered in his ear. He could become famous overnight. The man who had stolen the world's most celebrated painting, he observed for weeks. Each day he noticed patterns, the guards' slow rounds, the times when halls emptied, the moments when the painting hung unguarded. Every detail fed into his mental map, and every tiny lapse in attention became a potential opening. He visualized the heist repeatedly, silently rehearsing each step. And then, one winter morning in 1911, opportunity arrived. The museum was quiet, fewer visitors, a cold Paris breeze drifting through open windows. Peruggia, wearing his white Louvre worker's smock, slipped into the familiar corridors. The Mona Lisa hung innocently in her frame, unaware of the human scheme forming just steps away. The heart of the Louvre, once a sanctuary of culture, was about to witness one of the most audacious thefts in history. The Louvre that morning felt like a cathedral of silence. Shafts of pale light fell through high windows, brushing against marble floors. Vincenzo Peruggia walked calmly through the familiar halls, his plain white smock disguising him as just another worker. The ticking of a distant clock was the only sound, each second pressing heavier on his chest. His eyes darted to the corners, memorizing the guards' absences. He knew this was the moment he had rehearsed in his mind countless times. Before him stood the Mona Lisa, modest in size, yet commanding the room with an almost supernatural presence. Vincenzo's breath quickened. He reached forward, hands brushing the cold wooden frame. With slow precision, he lifted her free from the iron hooks. The sound of metal scraping against wood seemed thunderous in the silence. On the wall behind, a faint pale rectangle marked the place where she had watched the world for centuries. For a heartbeat, he locked eyes with her smile, a smile that seemed to know his intentions. Cradling the painting like a fragile child, Vincenzo stepped back. His heart pounded so loudly it seemed to echo in the marble corridor. He moved quickly, yet carefully, blending into the emptiness of the museum. Each archway felt like a doorway into danger, each shadow a possible witness. He descended a quiet service stairwell, disappearing deeper into the labyrinth of the Louvre, the priceless treasure hidden against his chest. The Mona Lisa was no longer on the wall. She was vanishing into history. Yet, when they reached the salon, something was wrong. The Mona Lisa's place on the wall was empty, marked only by 4 hooks and a ghostly rectangle where the masterpiece had hung for years. At first, no one believed their eyes. Perhaps the painting had been taken for routine photography. Perhaps a curator had moved it for study. But the silence of the wall spoke louder than reason. As the minutes stretched into hours, the truth grew unbearable. The Louvre guards whispered frantically. Directors of the museum were summoned, their faces pale with dread. One curator rushed from room to room, checking every possibility, only to return shaking his head. Finally, a trembling voice announced what no one dared to say aloud. "The Mona Lisa is gone." The words rippled through the galleries like thunder. What had begun as confusion now turned into chaos. Footsteps echoed, voices rose, and a storm of panic swept the once silent museum. By midday, Paris was buzzing with the news. Street vendors shouted it aloud. Newspapers rushed special editions to the presses, their headlines screaming, "La Joconde, stolen." Crowds gathered in, and boulevards, gesturing wildly, their disbelief turning into outrage. How could the world's greatest museum lose the world's greatest treasure? The theft became the talk of every street corner, every whispered conversation. For Parisians, it felt as though not just a painting, but part of France's soul had been stolen. Within days, the theft leaped beyond France's borders. Newspapers in London, New York, and Rome featured the disappearance on their front pages. Poets, critics, and politicians alike spoke of the theft as a cultural catastrophe. In America, people who had never heard of the painting now knew its name. The Mona Lisa, once a beloved treasure of connoisseurs, became a global obsession. Ironically, it was her absence, not her presence, that made her the most famous artwork in history. The Louvre transformed from a sanctuary of art into a crime scene. Detectives swarmed the galleries, measuring footprints, dusting for fingerprints, and questioning bewildered guards. Magnifying glasses hovered over hooks and frames. One officer even checked beneath the floorboards, as though the masterpiece might have slipped away into the shadows. But each step revealed only confusion. The security of the Louvre, once thought impenetrable, was now revealed to be shockingly fragile. Paris police were embarrassed, desperate, and under immense pressure from the public to find answers. News of the investigation gripped the city. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered it was the work of anarchists. Others claimed it was stolen by foreign spies, and still others insisted it was hidden inside the museum itself. The of Montmartre buzzed with wild theories late into the night. Every stranger, every suspicious glance became a potential suspect. Paris felt like a stage for paranoia, its heartbeat quickened by fear that the treasure might never return. In a stunning twist, suspicion fell upon the avant-garde circle of artists in Paris. Police questioned Guillaume Apollinaire, the fiery poet, and even Pablo Picasso himself, the young Spaniard whose revolutionary art unsettled the establishment. Picasso, terrified, denied any involvement, but the press seized the story. To imagine the world's most daring painter stealing the world's most famous painting was irresistible. For a brief moment, the genius of modern art stood accused of the greatest crime in art history. But the investigation led nowhere. Each clue dissolved into smoke. The suspects were released, their reputations bruised, but their innocence intact. Weeks turned into months. The Mona Lisa remained missing, and the Louvre's empty wall became a shrine of loss. Crowds still gathered, staring at the pale rectangle, as if the painting might reappear by sheer will. The longer the mystery dragged on, the more it transformed into legend. Paris sighed under the weight of a question with no answer. Who had stolen the Mona Lisa? For 2 long years, the world lived without the Mona Lisa. Tourists still flocked to the Louvre, but they stared only at the pale rectangle, a void that mocked the guardians of culture. The painting's absence made her even more famous. Stories were told, myths invented. Some claimed she had been smuggled to America. Others whispered she was hidden in the cellars of the Louvre itself. Yet the truth was simpler and stranger. Mona Lisa lay quietly in a trunk, hidden in a modest Paris apartment, waiting. In 1913, Vincenzo Peruggia, believing himself a patriot, finally carried his secret to Italy. He contacted an art dealer in Florence, claiming he had rescued the painting from foreign soil and wanted to return it to its true home. The dealer, shocked but cautious, agreed to meet. When the cloth was lifted and the Mona Lisa's smile appeared, the room fell silent. Even the hardened art experts stood in awe. But instead of glory, Peruggia found betrayal. The dealer quietly informed the police. Peruggia was swiftly arrested. He explained that his motive was love of country, insisting the painting belonged in Italy. Yet the courts did not see him as a hero, only as a thief. Newspapers printed his photograph, showing a man both ordinary and unforgettable, a man who had shaken the art world to its core. The public's outrage gave way to fascination. He was sentenced, but his crime had already immortalized him. At last, the Mona Lisa was returned to the Louvre. Crowds gathered along the streets of Paris to witness her arrival, cheering as if a queen had returned from exile. Once more she hung upon her wall, her enigmatic smile untouched by the years in hiding. Yet now she was no longer just a masterpiece. She was a legend, a survivor of history's greatest art theft. Her fame had grown beyond measure, and she remains, to this day, the most visited, most admired, and most mysterious painting in the world.